Dana, welcome to #Food Day.
I'm so excited to be here for #Food Day.
Brilliant. Well, we're pleased you're here. So tell us about yourself and your journey in relation to food.
I have been on a food journey for, well, I guess since you're born, you eat. So I guess the journey begins then. But as a kid, I didn't care about food. No one in my family cared about food. I had no relatives who cared about food. So I'm one of those people who is sort of a blank slate in terms of food, making it delicious, caring about its impact on people. But in an unlikely turn of events, about 30 years ago, I got the job as editor-in-chief of Food and Wine magazine. Not the job you'd think that someone who's never cooked before would get. But the minute that I became editor-in-chief, I also joined an organization called City Harvest that feeds, that is the connection really between those who have too much food, which would be like restaurants, and those who don't have enough to eat. And so to me, these identities around food have always been twinned. How can I celebrate food through the magazine and the lifestyle? And then how can we also make sure that people in our local area and then, greater country and the globe are well fed? So from Food and Wine, I went on to found something called Progressive Hedonist, where I've taken that notion of pleasure that was firmly established at Food and Wine. We really cared about people just taking the most pleasure from their food, gathering with friends, celebrating, eating the food from local farmers. And now with Progressive Hedonist is taking that sense of pleasure and recognizing that today you actually cannot experience pleasure if you're not also thinking about the planet, right? So if I'm eating something that's destroying a mangrove, there's no pleasure in that. That's just depressing. And the flip side is if you eat with the climate in mind, there's so much joy to be found. So I find that there's a connection between food, climate, and joy, because with food, you can affect 30% of the greenhouse gases and really feel like your individual choices are making a difference. How great is that?
Incredible. I mean, that brings me nicely on to the next question. I mean, you've got great knowledge in relation to food and the challenges that the world's facing in relation to its consumption, distribution, and associated impact. I mean, I've been learning a lot about that associated impact, and it's kind of pretty extraordinary when we look at the kind of the big issues that the world faces, and 70% of the kind of, the major issues that we're facing in relation to what we're eating. So I wanted to ask you, which aspect would you like to talk about today as a kind of key priority? And what do you think the individual can play, or the role they can play in having a positive impact?
I think there is so much that the individual can do to impact climate through food. And I think it's quite underrepresented because there's also a lot of policy change and corporate change and government change that needs to happen. But in order to do that, we need consumer will. We need people who are individuals to say, this issue matters to me. And with Progressive Hedonist, we look at many different ways in which the individual can participate. One is just knowing where your food comes from, which we've been saying forever. So I'm not saying that that's a new idea, but supporting your local food system, whether it's your local farmer or your local food bank, because we are talking about, hungry people today. That is one place you can start. It's where you put your dollars. So sometimes when people say, the eggs are too expensive from my local farmer, I'm saying, yes, but you're supporting the farmer, the soil, their family, that community. Like, let's not think just about the $9 and how it affects your pocket, but how it affects the entire community that you live within. The individual cannot waste food. Right? So this has been the most joyful part of my progressive hedonist journey, looking at what I'm buying and making sure that I use all of it. this turns out to be much harder than you think. And there's a couple of fun strategies that I've tried. You could take out a refrigerator drawer, so you just have less space, forces you to buy smaller quantities. And also keeping a waste notebook. So I recognize now that lettuce, I just shouldn't buy lettuce. I throw so much lettuce out, and that's terrible. I just recognizing what it is that you actually eat versus throw out, and ordering in proportion to, if you go to a restaurant, order in proportion to what you're actually going to eat, not what your eyes think. Like, ooh, that all looks so good, which I often fall into that trap. The individual also can advocate for policy. And in the US this year, voting is incredibly important. It always is. But there's local policy, local elections, as well as the national elections. So I am excited about the power of each one of us to do something that directly affects food and directly affects climate and can change our future. Even if you don't believe that you're going to reverse climate change, even if you put a spanner in it, or you just create more joy in your everyday life by addressing these issues, I'm all in.
Amazing. So if we want to find out more about Progressive Hedonist, how do we do that? Where do we go? And how can we join in?
I am so excited because I've launched a grassroots version of Progressive Hedonist, which means that if you follow Progressive Hedonist on Instagram and you DM me and you say, please send me the gathering guide, I want to invite people over, anywhere from 6 to 20 people, and I want to share one of these principles about what an individual can do about the eating locally, reducing waste, advocating for things you care about, and just enjoying this entire lifestyle, I will send you a gathering guide and I will support you through this process. I will send you recipes. I will cheer you on. I will pop in on video. So what you do, Jeremy, is so amazing because the scale is so huge. I'm trying to start these small little, I don't want to say fires because that's very negative. But a conflagration of hope and joy by starting these grassroots dinners all around the country. And you can also tune into Progressive Hedonist because today, in honor of World Food Day, I am launching a podcast. So you can listen to Progressive Hedonist anywhere that you can find podcasts.
Well, I was going to ask you about the podcast. What's the name of the podcast?
Surprisingly, Jeremy, it's called Progressive Hedonist.
Okay, so those two things, I thought for a moment that they were going to be sort of slightly different. The Progressive Hedonist is just amazing. And what a incredible offer you're making to people that, they can chat with you, they can communicate with you, they can, get your wisdom and knowledge from all of the years of working with food. So I really hope people join in. It sounds just like an amazing, opportunity, and I'll certainly be doing that. But the podcast then, your sort of vision for the podcast is obviously to be talking about food and to be talking to very progressive hedonists. But tell me a little bit more about the kinds of things that we can anticipate hearing about.
The podcast has been so much fun because I am learning so much, which is another progressive hedonist principle. Like, we have to learn things. This climate and food is very complicated. There's nothing that's black and white aside from the fact we want to reverse climate change. But what are our everyday actions? Very, not so clear. So I'm interviewing experts that I admire, like Dr. Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson. She has a book just out that is brilliant. What if we get it right? ? Right? There are so many solutions. And so Ayanna's on the podcast talking about all the things that we really can do, which is right up your alley. You should talk to her. She inspired me so much. And Andrew Zimmern, who is a chef and a TV personality and has traveled the globe. So asking Andrew, what has he seen in his own life and what has he seen around the world, like with the fishers of Zambia? It's amazing to gather some of his knowledge. Dan Buettner with the Blue Zones. Now, he has a very interesting perspective about personal change. Can we change it all? He's not so sure. So I've also talk to people who, push back. He pushed back at me a little bit. He's like, you really think individuals can change? I think environment needs to change. So that's the type of thing that I'm really excited about. Talking to people who have strong opinions, who are deeply in this world of personal behavior and how we all as individuals can affect the climate.
Well, you've informed us today, you've inspired us, and also you've given us an engagement opportunity with progressive hedonists. So I hope people join in. Listen, the very best of luck with the podcast. We'll be listening, and thanks for all your support. Good luck with your amazing journey. Take care.
Thank you. Take care.